excited to introduce this panel 6, Web3 Adoption Timelines. When? We used to ask when moon. Today it's when will we see mainstream adoption of decentralized technology. I'm glad to welcome Katerina, Bay, Vova, Holger. Guys, it's up to you. I disappear and I enjoy. See you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lauren. Well, should we have a round like introduction, because I've never met?
I think it would be reasonable. Let's introduce ourselves first. Maybe you could start first.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll go for the alphabetical order for the first name. Hi, everyone. My name is Bei Wang. You can call me Bei. I'm Chinese origin, but I'm Dutch. I'm now sitting in my home from the Netherlands. I have a background in media and journalism, and currently I'm a university lecturer and also a PhD candidate of digital culture and digital society. My involvement with Web3 is because I'm also a co-founder of a Web3 company or project, I would say, since 2 years ago. It's called StraightFire. And we developed a decentralized app. And at the same time, we are also a studio, creative studio. So currently we are developing 3D content, 3D platforms, and also 3D stories, basically, trying to really explore metaverse at the same time. So that's a short introduction, and I'm very looking forward to discuss with you guys.
So I guess if it's in alphabetic order, I'm next. My name is Holger Fischer, and I work as an ecosystem manager at Concordium Research, which functions as an entity on top of the Concordium blockchain. And the Concordium blockchain is a layer 1 blockchain, like a lot of the others out there. We provide the underlying infrastructure for decentralized applications to be built upon, right? Both DeFi, metaverse, gaming, a lot within identity solutions, because we have a very unique selling point that is an identity layer. So before you have to enter into the Concordium blockchain, you actually have to be identified. But I will probably get into that somehow in some shape or form later in this discussion. My day-to-day work goes with managing the ecosystem, helping projects, partners, and infrastructure to connect, and then also be a part of scaling it and expanding it, right? So helping projects to how integrate or migrate, or if organizations want to include some blockchain elements in any of their processes, we also help them with that. So that is a short introduction from me.
Brilliant. Well, my name is Katerina Volkova, and I joined blockchain in 2016. Now I could say I'm co-founder of a few blockchain projects, mostly in DeFi space. I'm an advisor as well for Web3 and Web 2.5 projects. So for me, this topic is extremely important, especially implementation of decentralization. And being a venture partner in Infodriver Capital, it's also important for me to discuss it, because we see more and more blockchain projects and also traditional businesses who are basically implementing blockchain into their structure, into their system. And we are investing in some of them. We also have hedge funds, so like we are strongly related to crypto anyway. And for sure, I would be happy to know your point of view regarding implementation of decentralization, and also would be glad to connect with the audience afterwards.
Hello guys. really great experience from all of you. My name is Vova. I've been 5 years on the position of CEO of different startups, medical technologies, hardware, educational technologies, and now I'm 2 years in the Web3 and blockchain. I'm now CEO of NFT Marketplace, game-changing NFT Marketplace. It's called eesee.io. We call ourselves game-changing marketplace because we are really the ones who accelerate sales. We provide external liquidity to the market, and as adoption, we lower the cost barrier to enter the NFT and Web3 market. You can see more about our functional, and yeah, we are really helping to adopt crypto, NFTs, and Web3. By the way, we are working now with some companies like Rarible, Graph, Chainlink, and other tier 1, tier 2 companies, and we've raised $1.1 million investment. So yeah, I think it would be interesting to talk with all of you to discuss the crypto adoption topic.
Okay, well, I think we all introduced about each other, but I think the topic has quite a central theme. Maybe I think we can just like each of us address a little bit our own view and or maybe say, okay, where do we see the current development is at?
Sure. So, like, I think first of all, we should talk about decentralization. Like, it's decentralized technology, but many people they have many, let's say, many definition of it.
Yeah.
Some people they are talking about just like decentralized storage. Some people are talking about decentralized functions, like many things. As for me, I would say that it's more complex than just like storage or function. And I can say that currently in blockchain world, I didn't see that much decentralized tech. And there are lots of projects who are promising decentralization, but not that many who reached it. To be honest, almost none. But it's all still like in the roadmap. And the more regulators are coming into the scene, the more I could say recently blockchain even became political game because in Bitcoin 2023, well, like I'm currently in Miami, I'm still there. I used to attend the conference Bitcoin 2023. So we had Junior Kennedy, basically like he is now preparing his campaign for election, for the presidency election. And he was talking to all of us, all the audience about blockchain implementation, about the regulation, how the regulation is going to be changed, etc. So I think it might be a good move towards decentralization. But again, like talking about decentralization itself, even blockchain projects, not talking about traditional businesses, they still struggling to make it decentralized. That's my opinion. I don't know. What do you think, Holger?
I mean, I definitely agree. And now you touched a little bit upon it, right? But I mean, legal clarity and legal certainty within this space is very important, right? Because I mean, right now, as we're seeing over with the United States of America and the SEC and Gary Gensler, it's kind of like the Wild West. There's no legal clarity, there's no frameworks, there's no structure. It makes it difficult for adoption to happen because institutions won't really touch it. Retailers are running away a little bit scared. And I think it's very important that you provide these legal frameworks that outlines, I mean, both like stuff like rights and obligations of participants like within the blockchain ecosystem, right? So, I mean, because before that, there won't really be any certainty that you can bring to businesses, but also investors or basic network participants within the ecosystems, right? Because right now, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty revolving phrases like cryptocurrencies, smart contracts, I mean, decentralized applications. You touched a little bit upon it, Katerina. I mean, when is an application decentralized, right? I mean, I think that's we are talking to a lot of projects coming in at Concordium who wants to do a grant application, want to review that process. And then we really deep dive into it and try to understand the decentralized nature of these projects. And sometimes we figure out there aren't really any, right? I mean, they're just throwing around them with terms like distributed ledger technology, and then they heard about that they might need a fungible token, but there's no real world utility to this token. Then it doesn't really make much sense, right? I mean, if you don't need a decentralized smart contract to facilitate certain stuff, then I mean, it really needs to bring overall value to your project, right? And we put a lot of projects under scrutiny for this, and in the end, it's a good thing, because then we actually end up figuring out what would make the most sense, right? I mean, it's the same with current Web2 businesses. If they want to explore the potential of blockchain technology, sometimes they contact us, and then they don't really understand the innate qualities of the blockchain, of the technology, and then they have all of these great ideas and really creative about what can be done, but at the end of the day, it actually only makes sense to put a few components on chain, right? So I agree with you there. I mean, I definitely think that there's a little bit of confusion, and a lot of people there needs to be a bit more education in this space, and people in this space needs to be better at explaining it in a less technical, buzzwordy way, and then do it through real world use cases, right?
Yeah, I would like to add something, because Katerina, when you mentioned the two words, one is the narrative, what the meaning of decentralized, and the other you mentioned about it becomes a political game. I fully can echo on that. It's not only a political game, but it's also a geopolitical game, because I, with a background as a journalist and now also as an investigator and researcher, I feel like really fortunate that I've been able to get involved in different area. Last week, I just gave a master class to a group of students from African continent, that they are tech students, and that we had a very humanistic and also social science discussion about Web3. It was very interesting. And when I was involved in our startup, we are a very small startup, but then since the bear market, and we kind of like really have a first-hand experience about how all these geopolitical like shift is happening. For example, we hear people like saying, okay, it seems like in United States, in North America, it's getting more and more difficult because of the like the whole legislations thing. But then people say, okay, then they move to Asia. A lot of people say Asia is the booming market, but because a lot of scams and things, so some of my colleagues, they went to Singapore, and they said, oh, Singapore is also not very friendly because of the local governance. And then Hong Kong at the same time, and or even mainland China, like last week, there was this in the mainstream media talking about this new Web3 narrative. But because I'm a journalist, and together with other journalist colleague, we said, okay, there is a major misunderstanding of the narrative, because the Web3 talk from the Chinese government is not Web3, it's Internet 3. So, you know, there's all these kind of discussion, and I'm based here in Europe, in Netherlands. And then in the Netherlands, there's also a very different layered of discussion, because there you don't have a very clear guidance of what your EU attitude towards this, because Europe is very complicated. But at the same time, Netherlands itself, some regions, they are also boosting like this, promoting Web3 entrepreneurship, etc., etc. So I think, well, maybe because I'm also from a media and communication study perspective, I think there is a major like confusion about narratives and terminologies, and this also kind of becomes very confusing for people. And currently, I see also two main direction. One is when people talk about Web3, then they put Web3 together with crypto, and then it gets a lot of negative feeling because of all the scams. And then so I know some project, they said, okay, we're not going to mention crypto, we just mention Web3, maybe metaverse, maybe create an economy. But I guess, you know, in the end, it's all the words that is not really helping, because from the day one, this whole new concept, this new business model, this new technology has never been really like universally communicated. So that, I guess, it's kind of create, a lot of like confusion.
No, that's definitely great that you mentioned this geopolitical game in certain way, because I spent many years in Asia, especially like in Hong Kong. I know what's happened in Hong Kong now. They're changing regulation, and lots of projects from Singapore, they're moving back to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is opening their doors again for international projects, especially regarding the licensing. But I think like we could discuss it like later further, more in depth. What do you think about like implementation of decentralized technology into Web2? Like, do you agree with all of us, or you have different opinion? Maybe you have different experience, because
maybe Vova can share something. Yeah.
By the way, guys, like my congrats on fundraising, now it's bear market, so definitely it was tough, I'm sure.
But definitely I'm very agreed with all of you. But one more thing that I very often now see that a lot of startups, they say about they talk too much about the decentralization, but nearly 99.9% of them, they have backend implemented. So it's quite decentralization only on words. And when they try to make this decentralization, even we try now to implement decentralization, but the only real regulation of the decentralized technologies now is the DAOs, like the one that is trying to work, obviously. But then when you try to implement the DAOs, it starts to slow down the progress of startup, because the DAO members is not really interested in in growing that startup. They just want to have the momentum of getting some momentum benefits, and not really like none of DAO members, when it comes to the startups, they are like long-term players. They're just short to middle to get the all type of benefits and then leave the startup alone. And right now, basically, the only thing that I see is how you really start that decentralization in terms of Web3 startups, is to create something that's gonna really encourage DAO members to help startups to grow, not only to just take all that stuffs like airdrops and just get some money and go get all the values from the startup and not even help. So basically, this decentralization is possible, but only if the community will make it possible. So that's my like main point, how we really can reach the full decentralization if we're talking about some like really big technologies.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point regarding this adoption point. What do you think about like Web2 companies, like Web3? Okay, we came to a certain conclusion regarding Web3. Also, Holger, you mentioned the utility of the tokens, sometimes not appropriate. And what do you think about like Web2 companies? Can they actually adopt this decentralized technology, or do you think it will be only blockchain, or anything else would be created? I don't know.
I think that Web2 companies can obviously use decentralization when it's valuable in place. To use decentralization for only the word of decentralization is the same quite strange thing when Web3 startups start to emit tokens when the token is not needed. It's like when decentralization is needed, you can obviously implement it in Web2, in Web3, and in any type of startups and technologies. But when it's not needed, it's like it starts to create even more problems, I think.
Well,
I think,
I think it really depends, because to just say like Web2 is definitely not true-hearted, that's also a wrong conclusion. But what I really noticed that is it's now really a matter of what is really like the purpose of, because like you just said, we've involved in like a lot of like different startup group, and we noticed that even in many regions there is all this like incubator to kind of help, like so-called help Web3, but it's just another way of kind of like trying to earn the last cents of money from the startups. But what I think is the main problem is there's lack of very clear use case. And many of the Web3 projects we had in the past year, we see there's a lot of like a work to earn or play to earn and that to earn. It's very volatile, but it's also very misleading. There are some projects that I found is quite interesting, but still deserve like a due diligence. It's like here in the Netherlands, there are some projects, they use blockchain as the infrastructure, layer 1, and then connect. It's almost like having the Web 2 business model of microfinancing, and then linked to like projects of farmers and small companies or businesses in developing country. I do want to bring in one term. I want to hear your thoughts about it. When I was having the discussion with those science computer students from African countries, they all have this consensus that they feel like if we say if this project is about the redistribution of wealth, then it will really motivate them. And then they are still passionate. Some students they had encountered with some Web3, but they said, you know, with the mainstream media have a lot of like negative cases, scandals, and all these scams. They are losing face, but at the same time, they feel like, okay, if there is proof that is about redistribution of wealth, and I guess that is a lot of like motivation or driving force. Like I see some discussion about TikTok is trying to kind of see like if they can develop the new model of kind of reward content creator, because some of the Web3 projects are linked to creator economy. Creators feel like they are exploited, but still there's just no clear and proven use case. And that is the problem. And yeah, as long as we're still hanging there, I just feel like the mass adoption, it's, yeah, but how do we define mass adoption?
Yeah, I think it's all very good points, right? But I mean, we also need to sometimes remember that what's important for the adoption of this decentralized technology is also when some of these bigger brands, right, they actually enter into this space and they use it. So for instance, I don't know if you all remember, but back in September, it was a pretty big deal when Starbucks started to use Polygon network, right?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of people in my circles who didn't know about blockchain technology, didn't know what an NFT was, what a digital collectible was. I mean, they never really heard these terms before, but because of Starbucks, now they had. Because then they saw it in the newspaper, they saw it on whatever social media platform they're using. These news all of a sudden start flourishing, right? And then people some ignore it, but it also sparks curiosity in a lot of new people, right? And then there's a lot of newcomers, and then they start to read about the technology, and they start to become curious on why would a player like Starbucks enter this space, right? And I think there's multiple cases of this where you have these bigger brands that enter in, and some of them succeed and some of them also don't, right? Because then you don't have a proper strategy involved. But I mean, basically the way that Starbucks did it, right? I mean, because they didn't really phrase it as decentralized technology. For them, it was more what they say Web3 technology, right? Because it allows the users and members to access experiences and ownership on stuff that wasn't really possible before, right? So I mean, there's definitely some, what can you say, you transcend these foundational benefits that the current like rewards programs from some of these bigger brands had. which digital collectibles and loyalty systems and some of these can alleviate and enhance, right? And I think, I mean, some of that is very important, because if we do at one point want to, what can you say, really get industry adoption and integration, it's brand like these that needs to enter to begin with, right? Because otherwise it will be difficult to entice the masses, and it will be difficult to get people to really understand what this is all about, right? And that's also right. I mean, Vova, you can probably relate to this. I mean, we have a few NFT marketplaces building on top of Concordium at the moment. And we have one called Space 7 as well. I mean, they just did it was fun. They did an NFT drop a month ago about with this big eesee, a big goalkeeper, football player, right, in Europe, been playing for Madrid for a long time. And before that, they didn't really had a lot of adoption. But then after that, it brought in so much attention, because you then bring in people that has a lot of followers, that has a big reach, and then you sort of use them as a catalyst to maybe get people's curiosity, right? And I think that's very important, because otherwise you can have the best technology and you can have the best value propositions, but if you don't really get these sort of wins from big brands and big personalities, it's difficult, right? So yeah.
I do think use case is the most important part, because like you just said, the users, they give meaning to the technology, because otherwise technology is just the technology there. And we had a lot of discussion also. I really like what you mentioned, that when you promoted like the Starbucks case, they didn't really use very like this scientific or technology terms.
No, exactly. That's important,
like,
right? Because you lose people in it. I mean, when have you ever sat down at a table and had someone really explain to you how the internet worked? That never happened, right?
Yeah.
But we're all very familiar with the applications that's built on top that makes sense. Google, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, right?
Yeah.
It should be the same with a blockchain, right?
Yeah,
Everyone.
Talking about use cases, I'm really sorry to say, but actually there are use cases, and there are lots of use cases in Web3. They are not that much known as, use cases, like because of blockchain. Like LVMH was one of the first groups in luxury world, like who actually implemented blockchain in order to track their. It was actually Louis Vuitton, because Louis Vuitton is one of the top luxury brands who has the major issue regarding counterfeits around the globe, and they tried different approaches, and eventually they implemented blockchain to track this, to track fake goods, of branded by Louis Vuitton. But talking about it's not like decentralized, but they're trying to implement.
But what I mean is, like, I guess people, or just like the big mass, they are probably have this really like resistance about all these cases they are done by big brands, because they are already existing, like LVMH group, and I know there's a lot of other in China, all these big luxury brands, they have been issuing like digital collectibles, and already for decades, for a few years, and then even with Starbucks case, and I guess it's because they are already so successful. So maybe I guess that kind of give people the idea, okay, you have all the money in the world, you can invest in new type of model. So I think maybe that also creates some resistance.
But there's two sides to it, right? Because I mean, when you are in this space, as we all are, sometimes it can also be a bit annoying with these hype just for the hype's sake, right? I mean, then you know that some of these brands goes into just for the hype. There's no real world use case, right? And that's where it gets a little bit annoying sometimes, because then it seems a bit fluffy, and then it's not really about what the decentralized technology is about. Then it's about riding that hype wave of this new disruptive technology without actually using it. So in that sense, I definitely agree with you, Katerina, because that is a poor point. But I mean, let me just give you a quick recap of something. I mean, because at Concordium, we're very focused on some of these real-world use cases, and we actually have what you call a state-owned company, a transmission system operator, building on top of Concordium. And basically, what it is that they use this blockchain for is to contribute to the Danish transmission systems with a green energy certificate platform, right? And the central element is this solution is just energy certificates, right? So, I mean, on a granular level, when you link the production of energy with consumption, right? So, I mean, it's a registration method for power production and power consumption that has been developed. And then you actually, for the first time, makes it possible for all companies that uses electricity that comes from this TSO to document exactly how much of their power consumptions come from a green, sustainable power source, right? Which is really important, right? Because then you can combat stuff like greenwashing. And this is what can you say, a class AAA example of what a blockchain and a permissionless system should be used to create transparency and to enhance credibility, right? Because so many organizations out there, they are doing greenwashing, right? They're saying that they're green and they're saying that they're carbon neutral, but they're not at all, right? Because there's so much scam and stuff done with some of these carbon credits. So what do? Well, you register everything on a blockchain to begin with, right? And that is a real world use case that people can actually relate to, but it's not as exciting as Starbucks, right? So it doesn't get as much attention.
Talking about that, like, I'm happy you mentioned it, because like, although like regarding Starbucks, it's becoming even like a, I would say, DeFi project. It's not like Web2 company anymore, to be honest, because they're collecting all these rewards. They're using like blockchain behind, and actually like they're just like, it's even banking system behind, I could say, what they're doing. But no, talking back about what you mentioned, like, do you believe, guys, that actually like future adoption of decentralized technology is going to be mostly in refi? Because what we see that basically like European Bank, Central Bank, like all these huge organizations, huge institutions, they're definitely going for more green technology, and they're welcoming blockchain regarding like if it helps some carbon emission, if it helps some, like this green tech refi, like space as well. They're also like making taxation less heavier for these projects. So do you think it's going to be the next trend, and actually like the next movement would be towards implementation of decentralized technology and adoption by refi? I think it's more like Web2 companies and real businesses like consumer businesses or whatever it is, like are going to implement it.
I'm waiting for Vova to.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Yeah, very good. Yeah, I think that the DeFi that you told about, I actually didn't quite think about it, but for me, to make mass adoption, to bring mass adoption to masses, really, it's like the Web2 company that use it and deliver the meaning of the usage, like with user-centric, with people-centric meaning, like not really taking people into deep of that. Because even for me, as for like someone who is deeply into blockchain and deeply into decentralized technologies, the green economy for me was not really one topic that I was thinking about, to be honest. I think that it can really help. Decentralized technologies can really help into that topic, as well as, for example, as Holger told, the transparency and security and all that. Of course, the same topic as decentralized technologies for logistics and for all those types of businesses that really need to be transparent and really need some security on back. So for me, as I see the mass adoption, it's like just Web2 businesses delivering the user-centric, people-centric meaning of the of how actually people can benefit with the from the usage of the centralized technologies.
Well, I also agree with you, and I think it really has to be user-centric. and then in that case, maybe a very straightforward things, I still think that it will need to link to real business in the physical business, because in the end, individuals or consumers, all they need is like to have a safety life, have a good life, and have income. So, and that's what I noticed that in a lot of critical data studies discussion today is we look at the globally in different region, the digital transformation in different region that lead to a generation that they are very used to, like the digital life. And then, of course, the discussion about who owns the data, because the Web2 companies, I think that the critical point is about, okay, they make so much money. Internet companies make so much money, and then we users, we become the product on those platforms. We contribute to those the values. So I think in the end, if all this utility of all the business model of projects then can give people a clear kind of realization of, okay, I own my data because, okay, I contribute to it, I deserve to get rewarded, the fairness. So again, the redistribution of maybe the profits, that will lead to a true mass adoption.
And I mean, to quickly weigh in here, it's so important sometimes to also take a step back and then look at where we are right now and say, okay, what exactly about decentralized technology can alleviate some of the biggest problems and biggest hurdles right now, right? And now that you mention it about decentralized data storage, right? I mean, something that I think blockchain technology can really help with is I mean, decentralized self-sovereign identity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so because currently we see this all the time, right? You have decentralized federated identity management systems which are used to manage digital identities, right? So they store all of your personal identifiable information in central databases everywhere. And I mean, here we talk about emails, usernames, passwords, everything, right? Login credentials that you use to Google, Facebook, YouTube, everything, right? But I mean, the beautiful thing about actually having self-sovereign identity, I mean, having your own data, own personal identifiable data in your own wallet, on your own phone, and then be able through zero knowledge proofs, like as a cryptographic method, to through access points log in on and get access to certain decentralized applications or certain websites or whatever it would be, right? Because then you don't store your information anywhere else, you keep it in your own wallet. So there's so much data privacy issues that you completely eradicate, right? I mean, there's so many problems out there right now in Web2 that you completely eradicate by doing it like this. And I think, I mean, this is something that a lot of people actually aren't aware of, but blockchain technology and decentralized technology can empower individuals to have complete ownership and complete control over their data, right? And I mean, what individual wouldn't like that? I mean, I don't think I would meet an individual person who wouldn't want full control, full ownership over their ID and their personal data. Everyone wants that, right? So I think, but of course, the technology is maybe not mature enough yet. I mean, where I work at Concordium, we're really working on this with self-sovereign ID. So go check it out. It's really interesting. But I think that is one of the things that will actually also create mass adoption, because that is a pain point. That is a hurdle right now in Web 2. And that is actually a problem that Web 3 can easily solve, right?
Yeah.
But talking about like this implementation, let's say it goes like along the privacy, right? So like you're talking there, going like with this kind of stuff like decentralized, and there is like privacy as well. But talking about privacy, do you think that nowadays actually this kind of privacy is possible, that because we are having like so many governments now looking at decentralized technology, and they don't want it to be that much, how to say it, evolve. They don't want decentralized technology to be evolved, because to be honest, you might have lack of control, right? Like from the government side, like they might have lack of control. So privacy is not the key, let's say.
Yeah, but let's get Vova on, but quickly. I mean, we see this in a lot of controlling more governmental parts where they actually try to slow down adoption, right? They try and legalize their way out of it. I mean, so just before you take over, Vova, I mean, that is a very, very similar thing that we see a lot of places, right? And then, as you also can say, if you look at China and the social credit scoring model, if you look at how they would want to use a central bank digital currency, I mean, I would take a step back and say it can also, that technology can also be used in too much of a controlling way, right? There's definitely some good aspects of it, but too much of a controlling way where you completely eradicate and get rid of everything that's personal free movement, right? Because they can freeze your accounts, they can do anything they want basically. So then they really take power away, right? So I mean, this technology can also be used not for the greater good, but for something that's actually worse, which is more control.
I want to add to that, because I think because of this narrative here in the West is very much focusing on how the Chinese government or the government is governing this. Actually, what underplayed is I guess that here in the West, the media and also the Western society didn't realize what kind of impact that has on the internet users in China. I'm currently doing a research about gathering like user perspective and the awareness of privacy, because there is a stereotype thinking that, okay, Chinese netizens, they are less care about their privacy, or because of, which is, I think it's very stereotyped, because it is, I mean, we all know in real life, if you are in a suppressed society, you probably developed even more kind of strong like motivation of resist on that. So actually, I think what I see is there's also a language barrier, of course. You have in Chinese language different terms to like replace NFT or digital collectibles. You have other terms. So what I mean is I actually see that with a very fast digital transformed society, that internet users, they are very savvy and so maybe the awareness rises even faster. So I actually envision quite a big mass adoption of Chinese like communities that they are going to embrace decentralized. I see that already happening in here and there and overseas.
That's what I wanted to add. I think that it's already happening.
Yes.
I think it's already happening, because I see in a lot of chats, I have a lot of friends who are building something like in Asia, and I think that it's already happening. Well, like the more you restrict it, the faster it grows. And one more thing that I wanted to add is regarding the decentralized technologies and all that full control and the willingness to full control it, like the mass really adopts everything that's being promoted. That's being showed on the media, on the TV, everywhere. But decentralized technologies, the one thing that I think, like in most countries and in most governments, they just have a bit of a fear, I think, on that topic. So we are trying, actually we are trying, I think, to adopt as many masses as we can, but until the real mass adoption will be translated on the media and influencers and big KOLs, big brands, artists, I think it won't be happening, and it is not happening because everyone is trying to really take it into control.
Yeah, just a quick clarification here. I didn't mean any stereotypes about anything. The only reason that I use China as an example is because they are actually the country in the world who's furthest ahead on the development of the central bank digital currency, right? I mean, it happens at a persistent low adoption rate, but they are by far the ones who has the most central bank digital currencies entities in circulation. right? And I also think I just read an article the other day that it reached over 250 million wallets. I mean, that is also an impressive statistics now that we are talking about mass adoption for decentralized technologies, right?
Yeah, well, it's nothing about criticizing, but it's more about I want to really draw our attention also towards global South, because I like to use China as a study case because when I was discussing all these with like students from Southeast Asia and South America and also different like African countries, I see a fast pattern about like they learn really fast. I think through the education, and then it comes also the embrace, but also it's constantly like moving forward. And sometimes I feel like I'm lucky to be in Europe, which is supposed to be like most democratic and liberal place. But at the same time, I guess maybe it is because of this, this privilege that I get the feeling that people from more like suppressed regions, they are even more critical because of the critical spirit. And then we shouldn't underestimate the power of civil society, because the technology really given meaning by the users. So you have the big company, you have the big governance, but in the end, the users, they kind of like shape the development of this.
They do, but it's also interesting, right? Because then we're talking about a central bank digital currency as adoption for decentralized technologies. But I mean, I work a lot with decentralized finance where I come from, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the first thing I always talk about when I talk about DeFi is, and I think you mentioned it as well, Katerina, is financial inclusion, right? Removing the need for intermediaries, such as banks, financial institutions, and enables individuals, or we refer to them a lot as the unbanked, to access financial services, right?
Yeah.
And when you're talking about suppressed regions, developing countries, I mean, where they lack the necessary, it could be identification documents, access to traditional bank, just access to traditional finance infrastructure, right? But then you can bank these people and you can provide them with these tools, decentralized finance tools, right? And I mean, but that is a whole nother side of it, right? So, and again, that goes back to what we started to talk about at the beginning. Sometimes we also get a bit lost in the narrative, right? And we get a bit lost on what actually constitutes decentralized technology and when is it not decentralized technology anymore. And I think that is an interesting discussion to have as well.
Yeah, definitely. And what I'm talking about, like, it's funny that you're talking about China. You've been like mentioning China, like, and I've been also like spent a while in the region, and I'm also like I can read the news, like, and I could say that they're trying to implement their own blockchain. I could say they're trying to create their own metaverse.
Yeah.
They're trying to implement technology, and talking about like this ID score of people. Actually, it's not everywhere. It's just like implemented in a few provinces. And Western world is just like so much brainwashed about China and some other countries. What's happening there? Like they don't read local news. They don't know what's happening in reality. They're just relying on this stuff that is provided, like, because you're not the first, Holger, you're not the first who were telling me about like China restrictions, like ID score. Yes, it's implemented, but only in few provinces and so limited territory because China is huge. And regarding technology, I definitely agree, Holger, I definitely agree with you that it's all about actually how you are using it. It might be for the better and might be for the worse. And talking about adoption in general for Web2 companies, we are coming kind of back to the reality. I could say also, like, I was just like thinking, like during our panel discussion, but Web2 companies, to be honest, they like, first of all, like, yes, like you mentioned, like lack of knowledge, right? And but in addition, I could say that currently the economic system, the economy is not that stable, and company, they don't want to push for budget for blockchain technology or any technology. Like until it's proven. And here we are going to these like proven use cases, like, and it's like one, you know, like it's like the egg and chicken, you know, like
dilemma.
But that is also what Vova, you talked about at the beginning, right? I mean, it can be very challenging doing a Series A, even a Series B right now, right? Raising capital in this market. I mean, the overall valuations of these projects are 10, 15 times less than what they were 1.5 years ago, right? And that is also because you don't set aside a lot of money for research and development when there's a recession, right? Or if you're close to entering into a recession. It's more about staying afloat. It's not about looking into what new, exciting, disruptive technologies are out there that can disrupt your whole business model, right? So, I mean, I definitely agree with that. We experienced that with a lot of projects building on Concordium as well, actually slowing a bit down because it's difficult for them to get a capital injection. It's difficult for them to find VCs who want to throw money after it right now, unless they really have a good value proposition and really also experiences user adoption in a bear market, because that is the real impressive stuff, right? To get user adoption in a bear market. That is difficult.
I want to ask you guys, how do you feel about this sudden, this new hype about AI? Because the other day I was just talking to someone saying maybe it's a good thing now there's less attention about Web3, but everything is about AI, because then the people who are really in the Web3 field, like you just said, there's always a hype, but maybe when there's a hype of something else, the true genuine projects or a business model or startups or scale ups, they're going to take time to kind of curate something very well. But at the same time, AI has always also been very distracting.
May I just add to this question the part that I'm curious about, what do you think about implementation of blockchain into AI? Do you really think that actually AI needs blockchain? Not talking about like small use cases when you're actually putting everything into blockchain, I don't know, you're creating your identity, right, via AI, and eventually you're putting into in blockchain to for NFT and etc. But talking about in general stuff, because now there are lots of Web3 projects that are just we didn't have AI, but now we have it. We are fundraising for it. And in Infodriver Capital, we see some projects who are coming up to us and fundraising for, AI/blockchain/ whatever. So sometimes it doesn't make any sense. What do you think?
I think that answering the question that Bay asked, I think that AI is going to stay. And the blockchain is going to stay as well. That are two amazing technologies. Why not to use them? Why not to evolve them even more? Actually, answering the Katerina question, I think that blockchain should be implemented in AI only in those spheres where they want to reduce the risk of human usage of AI to zero. Up to absolute zero. So AI plus blockchain is let's say, a true decentralization without even a sight of any human hand on it. Something like this. It's as I see it.
Yeah, but my concern is the Web3 Web2 giants fully embracing AI, and especially I see it in the digital media domain, that's the large language models and creating so much because these the ChatGPT, it's influencing especially in the university here, there's a lot of discussion. But my concern is we constantly talk about critical thinking, we constantly talk about education, but my fear is with Web2 tech giants fully manipulating the AI development and has a large spread of this, and then it's not just fake news, but it's also misinformation, and that is my biggest concern.
And that is a big concern as well. But I do think, I mean, what you touched a little bit on here, Vova, and what I think Martin just wrote here, AI makes data from the blockchain smarter. I mean, you can use blockchain technology to sort of, I mean, what can you say? Give data more integrity and give it more trust, right? Because a lot of these large language models, a lot of these NLP algorithms, they are trained on data sets, right? And you need to you can use the blockchain here to sort of ensure that you have data integrity, to ensure you have trust, right? Because there are so many problems around that right now. So you can create full bulletproof audit trails, which is really important. And you can validate certain data sets, which can be really important, right? And that is one way for blockchain to sort of, what can you say, create a more safer digital world with the use of AI, because it sort of facilitates a more safer use of AI, right? And also, if you mentioned ChatGPT, there are so many deep fakes out there right now. Yeah. Pictures of people that aren't really those people, voices of people that aren't really their voice, right? But there you can use an identity solution on the blockchain to tag the person, and then every time the real person that's speaking, then you know it's the real person. Every time it's a deep fake, then you know it's a deep fake, right? So I mean, blockchain technology can and will be used as the underlying technology to ensure safe use of AI. And I think that is the real story here, right? So we should just jump on that hype wave, right? And I think it's a great addition to the question, Katerina. What can blockchain do for AI as well, right? Yeah. Because I think that it's a potential marriage made in heaven, with a lot of use cases only being discovered now, right? And I think that is one of them. Yeah.
No, that's really cool I don't know, that you mentioned all this stuff, and definitely AI could be excelled like to the level, you know, like further, I could say, thanks to blockchain. But for now, to be honest, like I didn't see that many real projects that are implementing blockchain into AI that would need it, because like AI now, I could say that it's still like on the early adoption level, and I could say that it's
AI is on early adoption level anymore after what OpenAI did with ChatGPT.
They still are talking to like I'm advising like a few Web2 companies, Web 2.5 companies. I'm talking also like to huge giants, and I could say they're looking at AI, but they're not that much using it.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Because like, and it's kind of like, yes, it's not like about like, it's still like, that's why it's still an early adoption. I'm really sorry to say that, but it is what it is. And I think that there are much more use cases are going to happen, just like they need like time and education, because in some countries people even don't know what ChatGPT is. Just I was talking to some people, you know, like, and they're just like, ChatGPT, I had something, or OpenAI, oh, I had something, or like, you know, like, and there are lots of tricks, you know, like, and there was like on LinkedIn, there was boom of all these posts, like top 10 AI projects, or top 10, whatever.
Many of them are really terrible tool. We just get a reminder that we have to wrap up.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Maybe
it
like
was a pleasure to talk to you guys, really, like, I don't know, I really enjoy.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I mean, should we just go, everyone, each of us give like final words? So I will start. I really enjoy our conversation. I also learned a lot from you guys. And I think my last words, like, I couldn't give any timeline or prediction about mass adoption, but I think it is very important that we need to constantly think about, is technology breaking or making humanity? So that's always my kind of like, thought on the horizon to guide my way forward. So
that's good. Okay, but I'll give a final remark as well. I mean, I only learned a couple of months ago that, for instance, the EU, where I work, where Concordium works as well, Mika Marketing Crypto Assets, they just launched like a new regulatory blockchain sandbox for projects to go in, test, develop, build, and then they are really being taught around how stuff should be done to gain legal clarity, right? You should go check that out. That is pretty cool, because I think these test environments and sandboxes is really what will drive organizational, institutional adoption, right? Because it will then be done in a proper way. Bit more of a geeky last words, but yeah.
Guys, thank you so much. First of all, thanks Martin and Laurent. It was amazing to talk to you guys, Bay, Holger, Katerina. It was amazing. And the one more thing that I want to say, if you are a founder, let's make user-centric designs, developments, and all that to make mass adoption. If you're an investor, invest in those who make it all user-centric to make mass adoption go in masses.
And from my side, well, everybody is thankful for this panel, I think. So, Laurent, it's been great work. And Martin, who is not here, but I hope you hear us, like, thank you so much for your support. And definitely, I could say that it was vivid discussion with all of you that was very smooth. And regarding like audience, like if you have an amazing project that is looking for investment, please address to Infodriver Capital, because we are helping decentralized technologies to for better adoption. And at the same time, if you're an investor, I would be happy to talk about co-investment. And I'm definitely looking forward for decentralized technology adoption in the future, and maybe implementation of AI as well, as we discussed.
Thanks to you guys, it's a really magic moment. It's a pleasure to listen to your discussion. It has been all day long. It's the kind of moment we try to create. I have a small role, actually, to be honest. Olesia, Sofia, Martin, and Martin are doing great work, much more than me. What should be said should be said. Thanks to you, you contribute to this. Now it will be a monthly meeting to offer regularly different kind of content with not based on hype and click, but really smart people sharing their vision and their commitment. Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure. See you soon. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.